Typing right there. Alright, Cam, come on. Woo!
Alright. It all began as a joke in a chat room. Someone said, "We should totally write this," and so I did. I realize that's not much of an excuse for letting those loose on the world, but perhaps it'll make you judge me a bit more kindly when you get to the end of the story. Look back and wonder who would ever think of something like this. At least, I hope it will.
Alright, so... No? Oh, you... Okay, whatever. Sorry for cutting you off. This is Cheerlee's Garden. It's extremely good, Mark. And first read is going to be terrible, probably. Well, terrible to read. Alright, here we go. The entire theater complex was abuzz with the voices of 100 excited ponies. As Cheerliee peeked out carefully from behind the curtains hiding the stage, she saw rows upon rows of ponies sitting in the stands or moving between them, talking to each other as they waited or tried to make one last trip to get some food and beverages before the show. She glanced quickly to the left and saw that the musicians had already set up in the orchestra pits in front of the stage. They'd only be needed for a few scenes, but Cheerliee was still glad to have them.
Seeing such a big crowd gathered there made her a bit nervous, even though this had all been her idea. Almost all of the seats were taken, and Cheerliee knew there were barely enough to accommodate the entire population of Ponyville. The show would be subjected to the scrutiny of a great many pony eyes indeed. She retreated back behind the curtains, hoping nobody had seen her. She felt that would somehow be unprofessional. Everything seemed to be in order as she inspected the stage for the last time. All the props and the equipment were beautifully made, straight from the hooves of the masters. Cheerliee had only need to tell them what she needed, and they had provided it without any questions, even though certain items had seemed unnecessary. After all, they didn't know what she had in mind for this night. Well, she did. She was quite sure some of the props would make even a professional theater jealous.
The stage was divided into sections, each denoting its supposed location. This way, they didn't need time or backstage ponies to change the decor after each act, cutting down on the time needed for scene changes. Cheerliee was a big fan of this system, and it meant there was one less thing for her to worry about.
She turned back and headed to the stage left, where her students were busy getting all dressed up. It was a total chaos. With bits and pieces of costumes scattered across the room, as if they were sprinkles on a cupcake. Oh, God. At the center of this mess were the Cutie Mark Crusaders. As Cheerliee had come to expect, the fact none of them had sprouted a making trouble Cutie Mark yet surprised her more each and every day.
"Hey, that's my helmet," Scootaloo told Sweetie Belle accusingly. "Yours is way over there." "No, it isn't," she replied, as she lifted the knightly helmet off her head and held it out for Scootaloo to inspect. "This one has a hole for my horn, see?" "Are y'all sure it ain't my helmet?" Apple Bloom interjected as she scratched her head. "The king wears a crown," the other two snapped back.
Cheerliee sighed as she quickly threw a glance at her other students. Silver Spoon and Diamond Tiara seemed to progress orderly, if slowly, mainly due to how they constantly flourished and admired each other after every article of clothing they put on. And after every single brush of their mane, Snips was, to her great surprise, ready and waiting. The fact that Snails was backstage on tech duty might have had something to do with that, she mused.
She remained confident they'd make it in time, as she had the great foresight to start them all on preparations much earlier than any pony would have thought necessary. She had come to know this little group throughout the months, and she was prepared for almost anything. Nothing could possibly go wrong today. She had put too much planning and work into all of it to see it fail now. She smiled as she envisioned the peace, quiet, tranquility, and relief she'd feel when this was all over.
"All right, students," she claimed. "Let me just run you through the steps one last time. There was much groaning to be heard across the room, but Cheerliee wasn't taking any chances with this bunch. If you still have a part to play, but aren't needed on set, come back here. If your role is all played out, exit the stage on the other side. You'll be able to watch the rest of the play from there, that is, if you didn't see it enough already. She paused for a moment to ascertain every pony was listening, and they all nodded. If you forget your lines, just improvise or pick up from the point in the script you do recall. If the pony you're playing with skips some of your lines, don't try to correct them. Remember, we may notice if some pony doesn't follow the script, but the audience won't as long as you keep the dialogue flowing. The fillies and Snips nodded again, and Cheerliee smiled at them. Good, now get ready. I have to see the opening of the show, so be ready on set in no more than 10 minutes. She walked away as the young ponies got back to it, and Cheerliee thought they seemed to quarrel and delay slightly less this time, though that was probably just her imagination.
The last one she had checked up on was Snails, whom she put backstage due to his absolute ability to do even the most basic acting. All he had to do was listen for curtain cues and then carry out the specific action. She had even written all of that down on a list that was easy enough to follow, even for him. Up to this point, he'd done okay during their practices, but you never knew.
She gave him a few reminders, and he reassured her that he wouldn't let her down. All the while wearing that idiot grin of his, Cheerliee sighed as she went back to the main stage, resigned to the fact that she'd have to leave this one up to fate. She was pleased to see the other ponies already gathered and in position when she got there, all of them sitting around a U-shaped table, the open end of the table pointing in the direction of the crowd. Applebloom was dressed up as someone of royal descent, a shining crown on her head, a regal mantle flowing down from her shoulders. To her right were the remaining two Cutie Mark Crusaders, both dressed in exaggerated versions of knightly armor. Sweetie Belle's was colored as white as her own coat, while Scootaloo's was a bright red. Considering this glaring difference in color, Cheerliee wondered how they could possibly mistake each other's helmet for their own. Anyway.
Compared to the two ponies on the other side of the table, they looked heroic and chivalrous, which was exactly the idea. Silver Spoon's costume was pitch black, while Diamond Tiara's was a deep purple. The style of their costumes was likewise different from these two knights. They both wore something more akin to a courtier's dress or a diplomat's gown than a warrior's armor. Mean looks were being exchanged all over the table, and Cheerliee couldn't decide if they were genuinely trying to get into character, or if the natural animosity of the CMC towards the other two fillies was at work here. The only acting pony who wasn't on set yet was Snips, but then again, he wasn't even in the next scene.
Cheerliee walked over to the left side of the stage and held the curtain aside for herself. The leader of the orchestra immediately spotted her as she emerged next to him and raised an eyebrow questioningly. She nodded at him, and he nodded back, turning his attention towards the musicians, most of whom were friends or family of the actors. Cheerliee slipped back behind the curtains as she heard first soft notes float through the air. By the time she was back at the center of the stage, the music had increased in volume and could be heard all throughout the theater. The conversation slowly dying down as every pony took their seats.
Cheerliee looked up to see Snails, thankfully in the right spot between the stage lights, waving at her sheepishly. The ushers took their cue from the music, and slowly the lights in the theater hall died down. The pace of the music increased, and the feeling of anticipation intensified, until, suddenly, the curtain slid open a few feet, accompanied by the rolling of drums. She stepped forward past the curtains as Snails turned on a spotlight and aimed it at her, bathing her in a circle of light as she moved. Despite the curtains being partially open, the darkness behind Cheerliee revealed nothing to the audience. The music died down, and Cheerlee's voice took over, ringing out crystal clear throughout the enormous room due to the perfect acoustics.
Fillies and gentle colts, It is with great pride that my students and I welcome you to our very own play. They have all worked so hard on this over the past few months, and we hope you will enjoy it as much as we enjoy bringing it to you. Of one thing I am certain, this will be an evening you won't soon forget. Cheerliee smiled widely despite herself. Most of this was just the kind of opening she thought every pony would expect, but she was certain that the last part would turn out to be all true.
And now, without further ado, I am proud to introduce myself. Performer in Ponyville for the first time ever, Reginald the Sly. The music exploded again during her last words as she disappeared behind the curtains. Following them to the right side of the stage as they slid open behind her. The music died down once again as the spotlight was turned off, and then the main stage lights turned on, slowly illuminating the scene.
Cheerliee could see the play starting while she went down a set of stairs to get underneath the stage. The size of the stage itself was impressive, but the area underneath it was simply amazing. There was plenty of room to install all sorts of devices to spruce up any play, and the stage itself was thick and well isolated enough that ponies could work down here without disturbing the actors on stage. She had once started banging a metal pipe against some of the iron stage supports while the students were up on the stage to rehearse, just to see if they'd hear it. They hadn't.
She made her way in between the beams supporting the stage and the various props and gadgets that reached down from the stage, heading for the prompt corner. She finally arrived at a few wooden steps, which took her a halfway between the stage and the area underneath it, so that only her head peeked up above the stage level. From there, she could watch the play from the same side of the audience, without actually being seen by the audience due to the way the prompt corner was built into the stage. From the audience point of view, it just looked like a slightly raised box.
During some plays, a prompt would sit here to feed actors their lines if they forgot them. But the dialogue in this one wasn't overly complicated, and they had never rehearsed with the possibility of a prompt in mind. Cheerliee didn't think any of them would even realize she was there.
She tried to pick up the thread of the play, since she had obviously missed some of it on her way there. They seemed slightly further along than Cheerliee had expected, but she didn't know if this was because of them rushing or leaving something out, or if she had just been walking slower than she thought she had been. She shook her head. It didn't matter. This scene wasn't important to her. A grin spread across her face as she sat and watched and waited for a scene that was.
Applebloom slammed her hoof on the table as she dramatically looked first to the left of the table, then to the right. All of this is meaningless. We still have to put a stop to this right now, didn't we? And I don't care who does it or how, she said, trying her best to keep most of her accent out of her acting. She was perhaps the one with the biggest grasp of the script, simply because she found it easier by far to distance herself from her accent if she stuck purely to her lines. As soon as she drifted from them even a bit, it was all over, and the accent was back and in full swing. It sounded very odd out of the mouth of the king, to be sure.
But my king, I maintain that violence is not the answer, Silverspoon declared. If you wish, just let your royal advisor and I work on a diplomatic solution. Then I am sure that... No! The king cut her shout. Do you think... no, not what goes on when I have my back turned. The two of you will stay right there. The Lancelot the Brave. Entrust this task to you. Find this villain and bring him back here, so he may face my judgment. She decreed as she leaned forward over to the table, pointing her hoof at Scootaloo before banging it on the table again.
And now for my Scootaloo voice.
Just leave it to me!
Oh no, not that. I'll just read it normally. Just leave it to me. I'll bring him back kicking. It just sounds so wrong.
Just leave it to me. I'll bring him back kicking and screaming,
Scootaloo said as she raised the hoof enthusiastically, completely ignoring the script and the lines she should be using. Fortunately, it came down to much the same thing, which was probably the only reason the fillies couldn't hear Cheerliee grinding her teeth all the way out on stage. Scootaloo got up from the table and bowed down before her king, before taking a few steps away from the table and turning around.
The lights went out for a short moment, and when they turned back on, only Scootaloo was still on the stage. The king's table was completely deserted, and less lighting was focused on that area than before. In addition to this, Scootaloo was now carrying a white lance around her, holding it under one of her wings. The brave knight started walking across the stage, taking roundabout routes around some set props and pieces of decor.
These are the Wildlands, there is no doubt. So where could that Weasley Reginald be? I heard he's sly as a fox, and true as that may be, he'll never outwit the likes of me.
Speaking thusly, Sir Lancelot came up to the part of the stage that quite obviously represented a mountain with a mine entrance leading into it. The backdrop of the decor served as the mountain, while the shallow mine entrance was more of a little building on a stage, and expertly made. Suddenly, a small hooded figure emerged on the scene. Wearing black robes, his face was hidden by the hood, but anyone could deduce it was Snips, based on his height and a simple process of elimination.
The new arrival casually strolled down the same path Sir Lancelot was currently utilizing, and it wasn't long before they crossed paths in front of the mine itself. Halt! By order of the king, I can't pronounce that. Sir Lancelot have come to put an end to Reginald the Sly. Are you he? Scootaloo said, perhaps louder than was necessary, even during a play.
Oh no, noble knight. I am but a simple hermit, living in the mountains yonder.
The robed figure replied as he motioned towards the mountains in the distance.
Scootaloo scoffed at this and raised her chin. A little thing such as you would indeed not have been much of a challenge. You look like you can hardly stand upright during a gentle summer breeze. Now tell me quick, simple soul, if I wish to find this Reginald, where should I go? You are indeed fortunate, Sir Knight. The villain you seek has his lair in this very cave.
The little robed pony motioned at the mine entrance with a nod of his head.
In there? You're sure of this?
The brave knight asked as she peered inside.
Of course. Would I lie?
You might have to leave your lance behind, though. A lot of narrow passages down there.
The filly threw the stranger a few scrutinizing glances, then looked straight at the audience and shrugged. She placed her lance against the rocks outside and approached the entrance. If I don't find him in here, I'm coming back here to kick your flanks, Scootaloo said, again interpreting the script liberally before heading inside. As soon as she stepped into the darkness, Snip sprang into motion and pulled a rock away to reveal an old-fashioned lever hidden there, not unlikely those used to change the direction of train tracks. Hey, it's a dead end in here! What are you playing at? Scootaloo's voice came echoing from inside the mine. Upon hearing this,
whatever, man.
Snip pulled the lever into a neutral position, and at once a metal gate slammed shut over the entrance to the mine. Scootaloo's helmed head reappeared in the light as she looked at the metal bars in front of her with a fake of astonishment, shaking them violently with her hooves. What is this trickery? Let me out right this instant, or the justice of the King Goldencrow shall come down upon your head. Be whomever you weigh.
You weigh.
You weigh. You may. That's what I meant to say.
A diabolical laugh as he
Crap, I'm rhyming again.
standing next to it as he addressed the knight, so that he may still roughly be facing the audience as well. Be whoever I may. Why, you're thicker than I thought, you righteous fowl. It is I, of course. I, Reginald the Sly, Snipped announced as he drew back the hood to reveal himself. Did you think I would not expect one of you to come here eventually? Or that I would not recognize the great Sir Lancelot, bravest of all in the realms, when she arrived upon my doorstep? It is your courage that shall now be your undoing. He continued, followed by more laughter. Sir Lancelot shook the metal some more and tried to lift it up, but she could not.
You devil! You heathen! You dishonorable wretch! When I get out of here, it'll be off with your head. Reginald the Sly paused for a moment, and he put both his hooves on the lever once more. Then it's fortunate, said maniacally, that you will never get out of here ever again.
Okay.
Your cue.
He pulled down, and suddenly a great rumbling. Once it cleared out and the music died down, the audience could see the entrance of the cave again. But the opening behind the metal gate was now blocked by what appeared to be a wall of stone and rubble.
Snip simply took the lance the knight had left behind between his teeth and walked off. As the stage lights gradually died down and the curtains closed, the audience remained silent for a moment, surprised by the sudden development but then suddenly stared, talking amongst themselves about the events of the play so far. The only one who seemed to have anything bad to say about it was Rainbow Dash, who thought it was pure folly to kill off a character of the most talented actor in the group so soon. Cheerliee left her place in the prompts corner and went back under the stage. She headed in the direction of the faint banging noise, towards the part directly under the mine. She couldn't help smiling at the thought that everything she had worked for all these months was finally about to pay off, and memories of how it all started involuntarily flooded her mind.
And that's how Equestria was made, Cheerliee concluded her little history lesson. She turned away from the blackboard to face the class, and was at once struck by how eerily unfamiliar this scene still was. Ever since the board had decided to change up all the groups and put her in charge of the fillies and foals who needed some extra attention, things had been taking a turn for the worst. She was used to seeing students off at the end of the year and welcoming new ones back in the beginning of the next, of course. But despite that, getting a new group assigned to her out of the blue just didn't feel quite right. Especially not this group. Cheerliee thought as she gritted her teeth in pure frustration. It became at once clear that no filly or foal in the room had actually been listening to a word she had said, as per usual. Instead, Sweetie Belle and Scootaloo were having a hushed conversation, while Silver Spoon and Diamond Tiara seemed to be more inclined to admiring each other's jewelry instead of concentrating on the lesson at hand. In the back row, Snips and Snails were laughing at something that could only ever be amusing to the likes of them.
A smile suddenly crept onto Cheerlee's face as she noticed there was, in fact, one single filly who seemed to be paying attention. Oh, Apple Bloom, would you mind explaining the importance of the day-night cycle to our less attentive classmates? Cheerliee asked as cheerfully as she could manage. To her great surprise and even greater annoyance, Apple Bloom seemed to veer up at the mention of her name, looking around the room somewhat panicky. I suppose I can, let's hear it now, Apple Bloom says as she scratched her head. Night and day are important because if there were only one or the other, either what?
Don't sound like a retard.
I'm trying my best here. I can't do it. This is why we need Cam. He's actually stuck.
Okay.
Oh yeah. Cam, why don't you read it?
It's. Do you know where we are?
I have no idea.
Shit.
Night and day are important because if there were only one or the other, either Luna or Celestia would be very sad.
She concluded with a smile, raising a hoof, and that's it. Right?
That's it, right?
Jester? Cheerliee gritted her teeth once again, of course. The one filly who had been paying attention hadn't understood a word she said. As Cheerliee opened her mouth to formulate a chastising response, Scootaloo suddenly loudly interjected, "That's stupid! Really? Who could ever come up with a reason as ridiculous as that?" He pointed a hoof. Well, Scootaloo's not a boy, so there's a problem. She pointed a hoof towards Apple Bloom.
I can see the confusion there. Sorry. I don't see you coming up with a better answer either. I bet you don't even know what you're talking about, Apple Bloom reported, such as loudly as she crossed her hooves in front of her chest.
Oh yeah? Why did I get a grade on the last test then?
We all know you cheated.
Did not.
Did not.
Did
so. We're mixing them up.
No, you are. I'm not.
No, you are. Alright, do it.
You did not.
Did so.
Did. Girls! Cheerliee shouted. This is neither the time nor the place to hold such pointless debates. You're here to learn and pay attention. And that goes for all of you. Yes, you too, Diamond Tiara. Don't look so surprised. She paused one moment as she met the gaze of every filly and fowl in turn, as they were finally quiet for once. I'd have thought the topic of today's class would be exceedingly interesting to you young ponies, who, like you all, witnessed Princess Luna's return, a major historical event that shed much light on our country's history and origins.
Oh yeah, Apple Bloom chimed in. She was stuck to the moon for 1,000 years, right? The moon? Scootaloo snorted. That's impossible. Who even not even Rainbow Dash could fly up that high. Besides, what could she eat for 1,000 years? The moon doesn't exactly look grassy from where I'm standing.
But it's made out of cheese.
At this, Apple Bloom remained uncharacteristically silent as she pondered the question. She could just eat the cheese, right? The moon's made of the stuff. Scootaloo rolled her eyes as she planted her own hoof against her forehead. The moon is not made out of cheese. Oh, it is so.
Ahem. Oh, came a more serene voice from behind the two as Sweetie Belle moved her head closer to the pair. I'm sorry, Apple Bloom, but I have to agree with Scootaloo here. The moon can't be made out of cheese. By this point, the other fillies and fowls had pretty much reverted to their own activities again. You honestly going to do this? Y'all honestly? All right. Quickly.
Yeah.
I'm just going to be reading the part of Apple Bloom now. That's his part. All right.
Where we are.
What was it? Foals? Fowls?
Yeah, foals.
Foals. Had pretty much reverted to their own activities again, as Cheerliee stood, softly bumping her head into the black road, completely at a loss about what in the hay she could do to get through to the ponies.
What the hey?
I don't get what's so funny. She stopped doing so as she heard Sweetie Belle's calm voice, and her ears rose up as she listened. Perhaps one of them, at least, had some interest in her yet.
It can be made out of cheese.
Sweetie Belle stated confidently.
Because if it was, Luna would eaten a huge hole in it by now.
Oh yeah! No, it's Cam. You bastard!
Gone in her eyes.
What was that
I
sense?
suppose that makes sense.
No! Cheerliee screamed as she turned around. It does not make any sense at all. The moon isn't made out of cheese, because, you know what? Forget it. Class dismissed. You'll have the rest of the day off. Go! She pointed wildly. Not trusting herself to be able to keep calm in the company of these impossible foals. And Philly, even a moment longer, it sounded like I said balls. For even a moment longer, she thought she might start breaking things if this went on. All of the foals
Billy in the classroom quickly got up from their desks, nearly galloping for the door. What's up with her? Scootaloo asked as soon as they got out of the room, but when they were still within the earshot of Cheerliee. Man, I don't know.
Oh my God, Lucas! Cam's reading Apple Bloom. Come on. Go ahead, Cam.
Man, I don't even know, Apple Bloom said as she shrugged. They suddenly heard the telltale sounds of glass shattering against something coming from the classroom behind them. They both looked back over their shoulder and then looked at each other, shrugged, and continued on their way.
Pretty much every one of my characters sounds like a man. I can't really do.
Cheerliee paced up and down the length of the width of her living room relentlessly. Pieces of splintered wood covered the floor.
Go.
Starting at where her table had been and trailing all the way into the kitchen, where you could just make out the rough outline of what had been one of the table's legs. Shards of porcelain and hardened clay were sprinkled all around, and the place just generally looked like a hurricane had swept through it, or
Hurricane
two.
Katrina and Irene.
Cheerliee stopped pacing around for a moment, but only so she could aim a few well-paced kicks at the remaining pieces of furniture.
Well placed, not paced.
Placed, whatever. Why? Why can't I get these ponies to behave? She screeched in frustration. Oh, sorry, I didn't screech. And this, in fact, lay at the very center of the issue. Ever since she earned her cutie mark, she had been able to bring out the best in ponies and watch them blossom, watch them grow. Yet, there were a bunch of foals and fillies she'd been working on for over 6 months, and they hadn't learned anything. Not a single thing.
What? Oh. It ate at her confidence and kept her up at night. She lay twisting and turning as she wondered if she was losing her edge, if she had lost a gift. She spent countless hours at the library, Twilight Spark attended to, under the guise of looking for reading material that might interest her students. When Twilight noted she was looking at a lot of books covering the subject of cutie marks. Cheerliee told her she was interested in alleviating the concerns 3 of her pupils had. The self-proclaimed cutie mark crusaders. What'd you say?
Like, because you're doing...
What? I'm doing a what?
You said alligator because you're doing an Australian accent.
No. Crikey! Don't you look at the chompers on this one? But this was not true. The real person was the one question constantly on Cheerlee's mind. Can the cutie mark be mistaken? Is it possible that I never was as good at teaching as I thought I was? That I simply had easy foals and fillies to work with before? Or if a cutie mark is accurate at the time it manifests, can it perhaps grow inaccurate over time? These questions, and many more like it, slowly pushed Cheerliee down into a shadowy land of depression. She found her patience wearing increasingly thin, and lost faith in herself more and more. She found it hard to get up each morning, and harder still to bring herself to return to the classroom, where she knew they would be waiting. To turn around another day into a living hell.
It's starting to hurt my throat.
For the rather last 2
Okay.
nights, she had been lying awake in bed, staring up at the ceiling, wondering what it would be like to just let it all go. At times like that, she would sometimes tilt her...
God. What do you do? Let's constipate. What do you want?
Okay, I'm done.
I completely lost where you were. What are you doing? Okay, go. Come on.
I lost my voice.
Oh my God.
For the last few nights, she'd been laying awake in bed, staring up at the...
Shut up, please. Wondering what it would be. You have a YouTube. I should have a YouTube channel.
She found a patient...
Oh, I already read that part. It's really just us fucking up.
At times like that, she should sometimes tilt her head back and look at the glimmering steel of the knife. The knife! You call that a knife? She ain't pricing the knife, crikey.
Hey, you should give him your wallet. It's got a knife. You call that a knife? This is a knife.
She had put on a nightstand just in case she ever found the brief moment of courage she needed to.
Cheerliee walked over to a huge standing mirror in the corner of a living room, which surprisingly remained intact. She looked at the reflection of a cutie mark in the mirror. That's blank. It doesn't actually say that. I was adding that in case people are confused.
Those faces, those smiling faces seemed to laugh at her, mock her, belittle her,
oh my God.
forever having so many H's, forever having had the audacity to think that she was good at something, good at anything. No! Cheerliee yelped from the
She bucked her hind legs hard at the mirror, before shattering it into 1,000 pieces, which joined the floor. It's like 3 hurricanes went through now. All right.
This guy's a great wrestler.
Who? Oh, the guy who...
Whoever wrote it.
So many H's. Cheerlee's eyes twitched slightly as she panted and stared out of her window into her wild and overgrown garden. Normally, it'd be filled with beautiful flowers and neatly trimmed at this time of the year, but with her ever-increasing moments of depression and lethargy, not to mention all the trips to the library, she had not been able to tend to her garden as well as she would have liked to. Vines and weeds choked the budding flowers she had planted long before, suffocating them slowly, squeezing the life out of their growth. Oops. Oh. She stared first at the garden, and then at her cutie mark. Staring at the garden once more, and suddenly it all became clear to her. It all made sense. It was not that she wasn't a good teacher. Oh no, she had a gift, a great gift. She had not always had it, and she hadn't lost it. She would never lose it. But her garden, her class, was overgrown by vines and weeds that had to be purged from it. If flowers were ever to bloom again, vines that had to be cut and removed at the root, if she were to take her responsibilities as a teacher seriously. She quietly sat staring out of her window as night fell, the stars and the moon barely illuminating the darkness enough for her to see. She thought about what she should do next, what she could do. She realized the plans she was making were for the best and would eventually save more lives than they would ruin. But some ponies, most notably the families of the weeds she had identified, might not look at this the same way. They shouldn't be able to comprehend the truth of the matter in the way she did. So she'd need to be subtle. She needed to be crafty, and yet something inside of her didn't want this all to go down quietly in the night. She desired a show. She desired a spectacle. She desired to show everyone in Ponyville, once and for all, what a great teacher she, Cheerliee, was, and to show them she could deal with any problems that might occur during their fillies and fowls education, even if the filly in question was the problem. Lucas, you just gonna...
Yes.
Come on. What do you want me to...
No, I'm not reading anymore.
Oh my god. She struggled with these seemingly contradictory goals for a while, before finally receiving yet another epiphany. Another glorious idea. I think, she whispered quietly in the dark as she slowly grasped the knife from the nearby nightstand and held it up in the light of the moon. It's time for another school play. Suddenly, she started to giggle. All her fears, doubts, and other dark emotions burst forth into a vortex of madness as she snatched up a picture frame from the desk next to her. The picture it contained had been taken just earlier that month. It was the obligatory teacher with her class photograph that they made every year. She took it out of the frame. She then quickly lit one of the candles in the room, surprising that she still had one that wasn't too broken. As the little flame lit up, the room carefully held the picture in it. I have to restart that sentence. As the little flame lit up, the room carefully held the picture in it. The flame burned brighter and started to consume the picture. Foals and fillies, whose image was captured on it. And for the first time in 6 months, Cheerliee couldn't stop smiling. You're not going to read anymore, Lucas?
No.
Come on,
I'm not reading anymore now.
We're not even halfway through. Why are you just going to stop reading? You're busting my balls here, man. You're busting my balls. Wow, Apple's getting antsy. All right, man. I'm just taking a sip of my orange juice. Just wait a second. Sweet.
I love you.
I love you too, Jacob.
What?
Can't back out now, Lucas. Exactly. Why are you backing out right now, anyways? We got so much to do. My throat is going to start killing me if I read this entire thing by myself. Wait, Wolfman's now just playing Minecraft? You ass.
Mm-hmm.
Cam, don't encourage him.
I didn't encourage anything.
Yes, you did. Oh my god, I'm going to have to fucking read this by myself now.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
that's exactly what you're going to have to do.
So much right now. The Scootaloo took a few steps backwards into the dark.
No, you don't.
Yes,
no, you don't. No, you don't.
This is going to be
no,
terrible for me. Okay, here we go. Scootaloo took a few steps backwards into the darkness and acted surprised, preparing for a trapdoor to open underneath her. She dropped down with great agility as the floor disappeared from underneath her, and landed in a sort of metal cage a few feet lower. A cloud of dust was blown out of the mine entrance above her as a metal press came down to fill the mine and cover the entrance. Scootaloo knew that for the audience it wouldn't look metallic at all, as they had decorated it on the outside with what would appear to be stones and rocks to them. Ow! She grimaced as she landed, the bars on the bottom of the cage biting into her hooves. She looked down and frowned. There used to be a large piece of wood covering the bottom of the metal cage, but it was nowhere to be found. There was a great round of plastic tub underneath the cage, which Scootaloo couldn't remember seeing before either. Then again, she mused, if it was already there while the wooden platform was still here, she naturally would have seen it. Oh, great. Here comes the gore part. I can tell. A plastic tub. Oh, my God. Apple's getting, like, an erection out of this or something.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Them is just freaking out, probably just stroking it right now. Exactly. She quickly tugged at her dick. No kidding. Oh my God, I'm sorry, Joel. She quickly tugged at a few key strings in her outfit with her teeth, undoing the knots in them one by one. Since these knots kept the entire thing together, it wasn't long before she could simply shake it off. It all looked very cool, but it sure was uncomfortable to move around in. She could just leave the outfit in here for now. After all, she wasn't able to go back to the dressing room until the show was over, and she sure wasn't dragging it all around with her. She reached down out for the cage door and attempted to push it open with her hoof, but to her great surprise, it wouldn't budge this time. She pushed against it for a while and then threw her shoulder into it, which she instantly regretted, but still, it would not open. Turning around, she bucked her hind legs at the door in an attempt to force open the lock, but she may as well not have bothered. All she ended up doing was sending some banging noise echoing throughout the area. Dumb door! If I find out who locked this thing, I'm going to, she hissed in frustration, when suddenly, Cheerliee emerged from the darkness. Scootaloo's, oh my God damn it. Scootaloo's head about level with hers for once. I'm not looking forward to this. Even in the slightest. Oh my God. Apple, you bastard, for making me read this. Stop using memes. Oh no, I love you too, man. Cheerliee simply smiled at the filly as she approached the cage, not saying a single word. Miss Cheerliee, I wasn't going to say anything bad, honest. Just what I'm going to be very upset with the pony who locked that door. That's all, she said sheepishly. At least Cheerliee would probably be able to get her out of here. The orange filly started to feel somewhat uncomfortable as her teacher just stood there unmoving. Her features... Oh, God, I gotta burp again. Oh. Still, that's worse than the story. Still obscured by the darkness that reigned supreme under the stage. Oh, I get it. It was a joke. That's great, Miss Cheerliee. You obviously haven't lost your touch for pranks yet. Now, could you please let me out? The young filly asked pleadingly, not sure what to make of the mare's strange behavior. Cheerliee nodded enthusiastically as she stepped forward, and the wide, toothy grin split her face. I'm reading with a toothy grin now. Something about the look in her teacher's eyes shocked Scootaloo deeply. It felt as if she saw nothing but hatred and contempt in those big green clothes. Cheerliee reached out for a lever on the wall and pulled it down slightly. And suddenly, the massive metal above Scootaloo's head started to inch its way down toward her at a steady pace. The little filly didn't feel comfortable with the cage anymore. Oh, God.
I'll take up.
She let out, just let me finish this line. She let out a little squeal of terror. Wait, what's going on? Please, stop. This isn't funny anymore, Miss Cheerliee. I want to get out. Let me out. Oh, you're...
Cheerliee.
Okay, good.
Cheerliee brought her face close to the cage to stare at Scootaloo, relishing in the terror she was inflicting upon one of the little monsters that had tormented her so. I thought you wanted to get out of the cage. This'll get you out, you little weed. Just watch. Scootaloo's brave facade finally broke. as tears started streaming down her face. No, you can't do this. Every pony will no. They'll find out. Apple Bloom and Sweetie Belle, come look for me and ha! Cheerliee said, interrupted the frantic filly as she burst into genuine laughter. You foul. These friends of yours are next. It says it. These friends.
I know, but just the way you said it. you just got really quiet.
Don't worry about that, okay? You have different problems. 1 second. Sorry. Cheerliee nodded up the wrenching down. There was now less than half the original amount of space left between it and the bottom of the cage. 1 second.
The little filly screamed as she lifted her front legs above her head, pushing up against the metal, threatening to crush her against the bottom of the cage. The press protested with some metallic screeching noises and shuddered for a moment, and then almost came to a complete halt, with the machine pushing down on her and her pushing up to halt its progress. The pressure on her hooves that remained on the bottom... just a second, I gotta scroll down. It's fucking me up while I'm trying to read. Oh shit, what was I? The pressure on the hooves that remained on the bottom bars of the cage was immense. She whimpered as the thin, rectangular metal strip slowly started to crack her hooves. Oh, yeah. But she didn't dare move for fear of being crushed. The machine did not relent, and the cracks in her hooves grew wider and wider, making her pant with pain as Cheerliee stood and watched. Finally, she let out a scream as her hooves broke, and the thin bars got driven up into her flesh. Blood slowly starting to boil up around the metal and dripping down into the tub underneath. Scootaloo bit down onto her lip as she panted from the immense pain that washed over her when the blunt bars broke her skin, tearing, pulling at her flesh. Please, stop, please. I'll be good, I swear. She managed to get out between the gasp for airs and the cries of pain that otherwise escaped. Sorry, damn it, this guy, I had to read that. Gasp for airs and cries of pain that otherwise escaped her mouth. 8 months! 8 months! The mare suddenly screeched out in a fury, abruptly switching over from laughter to anger in the blink of an eye. That's how much time you had to show a glimmer of intelligence, and you failed! In a fit of rage, Cheerliee pulled on the left more, and the metal press instantly started to push down even harder, trying to crush Scootaloo even faster. For the good of all the flowers in the world, weeds like you must go! I thought you said you had it, man. Oh my god! Scootaloo tried to cry out as the metallic bars were instantly pushed through the fleshy parts of her hoof, the metal grinding angrily to a halt against the bones in her leg. God damn it. But instead of screams that came out of her mouth was a disgusting gurgling sound. That's my imitation of it. Followed by waves of as vomit as the unearthly pain turned her stomach and nearly made her black out on the spot. The only thing keeping her conscious being the copious amounts of adrenaline her body was pumping into her system in a desperate attempt to try and survive the ordeal. The foul and sour substance splattered all over the floor of the cage. Bowl. Sorry. Shut up, Lucas. You're not going to read. Stop fucking correcting me. And dribbled
if you're going to read, you better read correct.
From her mouth, joining the stream of blood as they turned into the tub below.
Cheerliee took a few quick steps back as the vomiting started, to avoid getting any of it on her hooves. That'd be simply distasteful. The machine continued pushing Scootaloo down. She now had to bend slightly forward as she began hysterically pushing up with her shoulders and head as well, grinding her hooves even more into the metal below, even as her legs violently shook, unable to take the pressure much longer. The bars of the cage floor ground against her bare bones, and they slowly began to crack. Scootaloo screamed in wordless terror, pain, and hysteria once more, her mind filled only with a red-hot feeling of pain, emanating not only from her heavily mutilated hooves, but also from the rest of her body. Her throat was raw and damaged from screaming and vomiting, blood dripping out of the corners of her mouth, and her upper legs, shoulders, and neck were all feeling the strain from pushing up against the metal. Suddenly, the strain became too much for her pony legs, As the bones in her hoof snapped, the metal strip shot up through her legs as the metal plate.
Oh, god damn, that's sick.
On soft flesh like butter, splitting her
Like
overstressed
butter.
into the new pain, 100 times worse than all the pain that had come before. Sent her into a new fit of vomiting, but all that would come out was metal blood that she spat all over herself.
I love this. The first time you joined our Skype call, like, first time we ever talk and we read, like, the goriest story. Must make a lasting impression on you. Alright. No, it's fine, Apple. And I was talking to Joel. Sorry, I sound like such an ass there. Okay, where are we? I don't know. I made you read the story. Well, actually, I agreed to it. Here, I got this. I'll get the next 3, and then you get the 3, so we'll switch every 3. Her body couldn't handle the sensory overload, and she teetered on the brink of a blackout. But every new bone that snapped pulled her right back out of the sweet embrace of darkness, and the blunt metal bar shot through her so fast now that she hardly had any time to fall unconscious at all. Blood splattered down into the tub where the red liquid had pooled into a lake together with various other bodily fluids, with more of it leaking out of Scootaloo's legs, as if she were an open bottle of tomato juice someone was holding upside down. She would be glued. Well, that would... Yeah, I guess. No. Oh, Apple disconnected. Let's give him a second there. We waited for you, Apple. You're welcome. The room swam before her eyes, and she was too weak to continue screaming. Her forelegs started to give out and would soon drop down as she started to lose consciousness in earnest. Then suddenly, after what seemed to Scootaloo as a century after the metal had broken through her first bone, although it was in reality only the metal plate actually stopped pressing down, and actually little by little bit, as Cheerliee pushed the lever up, an insane look of glee on her face. Oh wow, she's gonna make her suffer. Jesus. Scootaloo, now unable to brace her weakened body against anything as the metal plate slid out of her reach, tumbled backward onto the bottom of the cage. The metal bars are still stuck halfway up her legs, holding them in place. Oh fucking Christ. Her weakened legs couldn't handle the strain as she toppled backward into a physically impossible position, and with a horrendous scream and torrents of blood, Scootaloo's legs simply snapped off in the middle, muscles and ligaments simply tearing off at the bone as it broke right around the split point the metal bars had created. She had thought the worst pain had been over. For the second time in a few minutes, it needs to be plural, she was proven wrong. There was a pain worse than what she had been going through, and this was it. Looking shakily down at her body, as the mangled remains of her legs that was still attached, as well as the little bloody stumps sticking out up from above the cage's floor, almost made her barf blood all over again. But she simply didn't seem to have any in her anymore. Her body had grown pale due to the copious amounts of blood that she had lost and was still losing, and she'd probably die within the next few minutes, even if a fully equipped medical team appeared on the scene right then and there. Cheerliee looked with her left hoof on a lever, panting heavily and shaking with pure excitement, completely unable to keep the ecstasy she felt at her twisted dreams finally coming true. Out of her voice as she spoke, "Any last words, my little weed?" Scootaloo could hardly hear her, though. The ungodly amounts of pain she was feeling as death started to wrap her in his cold embrace. Her body had lost so much fluid by now that she didn't even manage to cry as she thought about what she'd like to say to Rainbow Dash, like being sorry that she'd never grown up to be the flower Rainbow Dash thought she could be. Instead, all that came out of her mouth was a low gurgling and another pool of blood. Your turn, Cam.
I guess not. Who'd want to hear it anyway? Cheerliee yelled almost hysterically as she pulled the lever completely down. The little filly saw the metal plate storm down at her like a battering ram, her body too weak for a bigger reaction in her feeble attempt to raise her front hooves to shield her head. With a sickening crash, the machine pounded down into the filly, driving her entire body into the bars below. The crash was sickening loud that even Cheerliee turned her head away for a moment and brought up protectively. She could feel the warm blood splatter against her face and body before she opened an eye attentively. The metal construction now filled the entire cage, and Cheerliee was nowhere to be found. Blood spatters could be seen in a wide radius around the cage, and the same red liquid dripped down the side of the tub to make puddles on the floor. With her legs shaking in silence, Cheerliee approached the tub, taking care not to step into any of the puddles. For a moment, she just stared down into the sanguine lake, amazed that there had been so much stuff packed into the tiny filly's body. Various chunks of flesh and bone floated around in the grotesque sea, as if they were tiny boats. Cheerliee angled her head to look at the bottom of the cage and saw little bits and pieces of Scootaloo, still trapped between the metal plate and the bars of the cage as well. But apart from those and the huge scarlet stain on the metal sign, there was no sign of the filly ever having been in the cage. Cheerliee licked her lips while surveying the scene once more, but suddenly stopped as the bitter taste of iron entered her mouth. She had forgotten she got the stuff all over herself, but it tasted surprisingly good.
Cannibal!
This must be
Cannibal!
what they mean when they say vengeance tastes sweet. Cheerliee must muse as she licked her lips and cheeks clean. She spotted Scootaloo's eyes floating around in the lake of blood, staring up unseeingly at the ceiling. She couldn't help but crack up and laugh hysterically, even as she went to get cleaned up. Even long after she got the very last spatters of blood out of her coat, the visible ones anyway, she just couldn't stop. She hadn't seen something this amusing all year.
Oh, wow. All right. Oh, wow, you only read the gory ones? You haven't read any of the, normal ones? The good one's Growing Pains. You got Through the Eyes of Another Pony. Anthropology is pretty good as well. You haven't read any of the ones, just off of Equestria Daily? Oh, okay then. Well, whatever floats your boat, I guess. Cheerliee finally got back to her spot in the prompt's corner. Still giddy with excitement, she stared at the stage without really seeing it, and it took her a few moments to notice that she hadn't started paying attention to the play at all yet. She was still savoring Scootaloo's last moments in her mind. She shook her head a few times to get a grip and focused on the stage in front of her. Once she did that, it didn't take her long to figure out what scene they were currently on, and Cheerliee had to suppress another rush of excitement as she realized her next playtime wasn't all that far off. She saw Silver Spoon in her black noble's outfit, and Diamond Tiara in the dark purple gown of the royal advisor approach the cottage of Reginald the Sly. I have to say it that way, it's just awesome. Reginald the Sly! Oh, that hurts. Based on where this scene fit into the story, that meant Cheerliee had missed the scenes involving Lancelot's broken lance being delivered back to the royal court, as well as the ones where the king decided who to send next. Cheerliee didn't mind having missed these at all. They didn't interest her. She only cared about what was to come next. The Pink Mare was quite proud of the set pieces that were together formed Reginald's cottage, considering them to be very nicely made. Instead of an actual closed-off building, only the back wall and the left wall had been put into place, giving the audience a clean view of the building's interior. Just a second, I gotta put this to Do Not Disturb, so I don't hear the beeps. Throws me off. She didn't want to, aggrandize her own work, but she was quite proud of the way in which she'd made this all fit together. Though, through her plans and instructions, with care and caution, my dear Diamis, the gray filly with the silver mane said, that's the only way to deal with a pony like him, if you want to harbor any hope of coming out on top, that is. The white and purple maned filly nodded thoughtfully, but of course, Silvertongue, I'm well aware. And, of course, in our case, even more thoughtfulness is required. We're not simply telling him to stand down, after all. The two ponies exchanged a grin as they walked down the path toward Reginald's front door, which was placed in the wall on the right side of the house. Of course, the wall itself hadn't been built on stage, but the audience got the basic idea behind it easy enough. The two fillies nodded back and forth in front of the door until Silvertongue finally leaned forward with a sigh and knocked on the door. The audience could see a small door open at the back of Reginald's house, as the antagonist himself stepped through it into his living room. Reginald. That really hurts my throat now. Carrying a teapot, which he put down on the table in the center of the room next to 3 cups that were already there. Visitors at this hour of night? I wonder who it could be. The villain said louder than was perhaps needed, with a fourth wall breaking wink at the audience. Nice. He strolled over to the door and opened it, but he left the door chain in place. Yes? He asked, while peeping through the small opening he had created. I wasn't expecting any visitors today. Forget the pleasantries, Reginald dear, the Silverman fully said. We know who you are. We know you know who we are. DMS finished the sentence for her companion. Reginald's frown was clearly visible even to the people in the back of the theater. Then why knock? Surely you don't believe I'd let you in just so you could apprehend me. The pair of fillies laughed. Apprehend you? No, my dear, you have this all wrong. We don't want to apprehend you. We want to work with you, to take care of the king, once and for all. The fillies remained silent for a moment before DMS added, We know you're a reasonable guy, Reginald. This will be beneficial to you as well. Alright, Cam, you picked up some?
Reginald closed the door and took the chain off before opening it once more fully this time. All right, come in, he said as he walked to the table in the middle of the room. He grabbed the teapot that stood there by the ear, carefully pouring tea into the 3 cups on the table. Let's hear what you have to say, then, he said as he started sipping from one of the cups. The other 2 gathered around the table as well, each in front of one of the other 2 cups, which they stared at with suspicion. How exactly do we know you haven't poisoned these? Wait, is that a guy? Silvertongue demanded to know. How do you know I didn't poison the tea I prepared without knowing you'd come? And that I'm drinking myself, Reginald mockingly replied. The other 2 seemed to relax at this train of thought, sipping their tea slowly. It had been a rather long trip, and as ladies of style, they did enjoy their daily cup of tea. Diana opened her mouth to start negotiations, when she suddenly fell silent, stared at the cups on the table. 3 cups. If you didn't know we were coming, why are there 3? She started before pressing her foot against her head as she took an unsteady step back from the table. Oh, Stars, you did poison us, but you drank. How? Silver said, shakingly as she sank to her knees. It was in the cups, not in the tea. Snips cried as he took another sip. The 2 fillies were swaying about theatrically now, until Diana suddenly brought up, Wait, my head, it was really poisoned, before both she and Silver toppled over onto the ground. Yeah, really poisoned it? Poisoned it? Still having confusion? This wasn't in the script. He walked over to the metal ring on the floor and grabbed it between his teeth, pulling it up to reveal a trapdoor. He dragged the perfectly still fillies to the trapdoor one at a time, throwing them into the hole before closing it again. And there they'll rot. Reginald doesn't deal with traitors. They're too traitorous, he mused as he exited the stage at the door in the back of his house. The stage light was slowly going out. By the time the curtains closed and the lights above this audience went on to signal the half-show break, Cheerliee was already long gone from her seat in the prompt corner, making her way to the unknown destination, under the stage.
Silver Spoon woke up feeling groggy, her senses still blurred by whatever it was that had been in those teacups. She was vaguely aware of a well-lit circular room, with lots of metallic objects casting the glimmer of reflections everywhere. She tried moving her head, but found to her great shock and surprise that she could not. The sudden panic she felt helped clear her senses in a matter of moments, and her sight quickly returned to her. She was shocked when she found she could not move her legs, except for the front left one, which she could move slightly. Okay, 2 eyes in it. That's weird. It felt as if some metallic bands anchored them to the ground, and something was likewise keeping her eyes open. Oh, hello, Ray. Is it still recording?
Good. Good. I want to throw up. The taste of iron filled their mouth as well. Since it was being held open by some sort of metallic cylinder, her tongue...
Oh, shit.
What? You think you know
this is going to be bad.
Yeah, I think it's going to pour acid into her mouth. I'm not looking forward to this. Inside this... her tongue rested inside of the cylinder, and she could move it about freely. A fact she capitalized on as she explored the inside. It wasn't solid by any means. It felt more like a frame that held a basic cylindrical shape. But she couldn't bite down onto it or spit it out, no matter how hard she tried. Attempts at moving her body proved pointless, as, well, apart from the bands around her hooves or whatever was keeping her head in place, something was pulling her up around her middle, so she couldn't slouch down either. Realizing she wouldn't get out of this predicament on her own, she looked around the room as best she could. The first thing she noticed was a grotesque machine, a mess of metallic arms, wheels, and various tools which extended from a central black box. It seemed to be on rails, and Silver noted some of these rails ran towards her as well, but she couldn't look down to see where they ended. As she wasn't able to determine the machine's use or function, she quickly lost interest. That's how we were having fun at the beginning of reading this, and now we're not.
Because it's going to be bad.
I know. It was fun to read at first, but... where was I? No, sorry. Oh, there we are. Sorry, I scrolled down too much. It was then that she finally saw Diamond Tiara, a few meters to the right of the machine and trapped in much the same way she was. That is to say, her hooves had been attached to the ground with metal clamps, and she had a leather band around her middle as well, which was attached to the ceiling with chains. She also wasn't wearing her costume anymore, which made Silver realize she couldn't feel hers on her body either. Here, I'm going to keep reading, don't worry. I just had to burp. Burping a lot today. On top of all this, there also appeared to be a glass wall around Tiara. With her standing at the center of the glass cylinder, it seemed like the whole construction would... Oh, God. It's going to fill up with acid. That's what's going to happen. It seemed like the whole construction could be lifted up out of its place by a few chains connected to the top of the glass wall, as it only reached halfway up the ceiling. I'm guessing that's what's going to happen. Apple, am I close? I don't really care about spoilers that much. Oh, God.
That'd be awful to read.
This went from bad to worse, or from worse to horrible. God damn.
All joking and making fun of it, and it's fucking, oh God.
No, he's having the time of his life, stroking his erection to this thing. Jesus. Spooning. Spoon also spotted several tubes and hoses opening into the cylinder, but nothing seemed to be coming out of them for now. Her head was fixed to look in the gray filly's direction, and freaky little metal clamps held their eyes open as well. She didn't appear to have anything in her mouth, though, and Silver Spoon didn't think she was even awake yet. Spoon's eyes slowly started drying out, but before the sensation could become unbearable, some kind of liquid dripped down into her eyes.
Oh, no!
Out. No, it's not acid. If it was acid, I'd fucking freak. Silver shuddered to think about what reason anyone could have to strap her into so elaborate a device, but she managed to keep her calm. It was possible they had accidentally been poisoned, and this was a high-tech medical facility after all. Yeah, okay. Seems legit. She didn't really believe it herself, but the thought did keep her from screaming right there and then. The thought and the thing in her mouth, she was forced to admit. Right then, Diamond Tiara woke up. Oh my God! She woke, and then she thought the same. She thought that and she did not seem to God. Right then, Diamond Tiara woke up, and she did not seem to possess Silver Spoon's calm disposition. She immediately shrieked when she found out she was being held immobile in a glass bowl. Oh, no. Until her eyes fell on the gray filly a few meters away from her. Silver Spoon? What's going on? Where are we? Get me out! She cried. Silver tried to respond, but her reply of wasn't much.
Oh, okay. That was pretty funny, but...
Finally awake, I see, said a calm voice accompanying... Oh, I made it sound crazy there. Finally awake, I see, said a calm voice accompanied by hoof steps. As Cheerliee stepped into the room, Diamond immediately started crying out for help, but Cheerliee paid her no heed. She seemed far more interested in Spoon and the machine in the middle. So, let's get started, shall we? She said as she walked right in between the two fillies, pulling down a lever on the machine's right side. At once it zoomed to life, little lights flickering on all around it as metallic arms swung down and moved into place. Cheerliee walked over to the gray filly, who was now positively terrified, and whispered into her ear, "You have no idea how much research and measuring went into this, but I got it all right, you'll see." The filly asked in confusion, but Cheerliee simply shook her head and smiled as she took a few steps back. "Oh, and if you feel around with your free leg, of course, you should find a button. Just hold it down if you've had enough, but I warn you, your friend won't like it," Cheerliee said, giggling carelessly at the end of the sentence. Oh, fuck.
It's like Saw.
Well, actually, it's worse than Saw. Because Saw isn't really that bad because the actors are horrible. But then again, this is still pretty bad. The button pours acid in. Yeah, I know, I can tell what it's going to do. It's pretty obvious. Spoon tried to follow her teacher with her gaze, being both utterly confused and terrified at the same time, but Cheerliee quickly disappeared from her narrow field of vision. Alright, Cam, you read a bit?
Okay, 1 second. Second Wolf is trying to get me to play Gripball. I'm telling him no.
He's in the chat, you know that?
Oh, whoops.
Smooth.
Well, I'm telling you no.
Wait, Ray, how's the recording so far?
Okay. Did you,
It's, her attention was suddenly grabbed by the strange device in the center of the room. Yeah, but how long is it so far, like, time-wise? And where can we even post it?
You'd have to break it up in parts. There's no way.
Yeah, so. Alright, go ahead.
Her attention was suddenly grabbed by the strange device in the center of the room as it started rolling towards her. At first, the silver filly watched in bewilderment until she spotted one of the robotic arms lifting a metal needle up to the same height as her left eye, keeping it there as it advanced. If her eyelids weren't already artificially being held open, her eyes would have gone wide with fear when she realized what was about to happen. "Don't do it! She begged anymore, spit out of her mouth in intelligible words. She saw the tip of the needle slowly come closer to her eye as she tried to wrestle free of her bonds. She came to the same conclusion she had before. She'd never get free on her own. She racked her brain for a way out as she started to panic until she suddenly remembered Cheer's words. She felt around with her left hoof, and sure enough, she bumped to a slightly elevated point on the floor. The button! With hesitation, she pushed down onto it, and the needle came to an immediate about 5 centimeters from her face. Holy shit. She sighed in relief. That had been a lot easier than she expected. Maybe it was a test, and now that she had passed it, Cheerliee would... She never got to finish that train of thought. As Diamond Tiara's terrifying scream pierced her eardrums. Looking past the machine with her right eye, Spoon focused her gaze on the glass tank Diamond Tiara was in. Some kind of clear liquid was now flowing into the tank with various pipes and hoses on the side, and it was slowly spreading over the floor. Silver Spoon quickly drew the connection between her pressing the button, the machine stopping, and the liquid starting to fill up the tank. But compared to her losing her eye, she thought, Diamond could afford to get wet for a while. The light pink filly didn't seem to agree as she screamed fearfully, "Spoon, help me get out of here!" Spoon rolled her eyes, as best as she could at this. What could she do to help anyway? The level of the water in the tank kept rising, and it finally got high enough to touch the bottom of Diamond's legs. Silver Spoon realized her mistake. She watched in horror as her friend screamed in pain, a cloud of red blood diffusing to the clear liquid as it ate away at the filly's flesh. What Spoon had assumed to be water was obviously acid of some description, and it was safe bet Diamond had smelled that ages ago. The corrosive liquid continued to pour into the glass tank. chunks of flesh already coming loose from just above Diamond's hooves as they got soaked in it. The white of the bone became visible quickly, and Tiara screamed and begged for Cheerliee or Spoon, or any pony really, to please make it stop. Do you like it? They use that stuff to clean carcasses, you know. Get some nice skeletons to display in the classroom. Silver heard her teacher say from behind. She reluctantly looked at the needle, still suspended in the air in front of her, and took a deep breath. Oh, man. Summoning all of her courage, with tears rolling out of the corners of her eyes, Silver Spoon slowly slid her hoof off the button. At once the machine buzzed to life again, and the flow of acid in the glass tank stopped. Diamond Tiara shrieked heartbreakingly for a while longer, before dying down to sobbing as the last piece of flesh touching the voracious liquid got melted right off her bones. She had nothing but bone left up to 2 centimeters from her hoof, and a small stream of blood was flowing down into the acid from the frayed and disfigured stump of meat just above it. The scarlet clouds that floated around in the vicious liquid vanished quickly as well, apparently no more resistant to the corrosion than Diamond's flesh was. Spoon's lips trembled as the needle approached her eye, filling more and more of her field of vision. Then after what seemed like an eternity, it finally reached its destination. The silver filly felt the pressure on her eye increase for a moment. Suddenly popped in and pain exploded inside of her head.
Oh, God damn it.
She let out an unintelligible, garbled scream as pain receptors she never imagined existed bombarded her mind with warning signals, telling her something was wrong. You think? Not knowing or caring that she was powerless to do anything about it. To the left side of her vision first colored red, and then suddenly winked out, as half of her world darkened forever. Silver Spoon momentarily forgot her pain, as she wondered why she had never realized how much her sight meant to her until now. Agony once again washed over her as 2 little hooks sprung out of the tip of the needle, anchoring themselves into her eyeball. Oh no!
Oh God!
Oh no! The needle started to spin around and started throwing up right after. Right there. She felt her eyes start to turn with it. Her hoarse cries echoed throughout the room. The device spun the appendage around faster and faster, winding her optical nerves up like a bored child wound a piece of string. The painful sensation of the load was too much for the little filly to bear, and shame got added to her torment as she lost control over her bladder. I think I would shit myself, honestly. Jesus Christ.
Oh God! All right.
Do you want me to continue? I mean,
I got it. I'll take it for a bit. Oh, Jesus. The needle suddenly drew back, taking her. As she felt more blood drip down her cheek. She wanted to scream and push her hoof up against her now empty socket, but her stomach protested so much. Well, she couldn't move her hoof anyways. This is so much that she needed all her will not to throw up all over herself, and even her left leg was too restricted to get her hoof up all the way. She panted heavily into the metal cylinders. What's going to happen with that metal cylinder? That's what I'm worried about here. As sweat dripped off her body, and the machine drew slightly, holding up the skewered eye that had once belonged to her like a trophy. Well, now it's Cheerlee's as a trophy, though, so yeah. At that point, Silver Spoon noticed Diamond Tiara looking at her from the corner of her eye, and her friend looked even more sick to the stomach than she was feeling herself. With the silver filly set yet another emotion in the pink filly's eyes, hope and gratefulness. Oh, fuck. She reminded herself that her suffering may yet save her friend, as perhaps Cheerliee would let Tiara go if she just persevered. And she built up an iron fortress of resolve, which melted like ice before the sun as she saw the machine draw closer once more. This time it replaced the arm with a needle in favor of one of 4 sharp blades coming together into the tip like some kind of drill. The menacing contraption started to spin around at high speeds, accompanied by a low buzzing noise. Bzzz. Where are the fucking bees in here, man? I'm just stalling now because I don't want to read this. As it drew even nearer, it didn't take Silver Spoon long to figure out it wasn't aimed at her remaining eye this time. Though with only one eye left, she found it somewhat hard to determine its trajectory at first. Suddenly, she swallowed as best she could as it... Here's the cylinder, Jesus. And the reason for the cylinder in her mouth became chillingly clear. Oh, God. She hesitated for a moment, but just before the blades entered her mouth, she pressed down onto the button again. At once she could hear Diamond scream as the very first drop that flowed out of the pipes already raised the level of vitriol enough to contact their soft, tender flesh, starting the suffering of the pink filly all over again. Silver Spoon! Silver Spoon! She cried, apparently in too much pain to think of anything better. Silver Spoon cried over tears from her right eye and bloody ones from her socket as she sobbed. Over and over, shaking in disgust at her own perceived cowardice. But as Diamond's flesh slowly got consumed by the clear liquid, it became clear that Cheerliee had a few more tricks up her sleeve. A loud banging noise announced the arrival of 4 small but hefty balls, which came rolling through as of yet unused pipes, only to plummet down into the bath of acid below. The deceptively innocent-looking liquid splashed up around, raining down on the, surfing wet, from every direction. Small drops fell down onto her back. This part is good. How? Oh, God, Apple. God damn it! I don't know if I want to negotiate with this person. To you, man. Jesus, this is mess.
This is not Sparta. It's terrible.
Damn it. Melting holes through her coat and skin, leaving tiny, bloody craters as a sort of grotesque parody of a lunar landscape. At the same time, a wave of the stuff crashed into her right flank, her cutie mark melting away as the vitriol dug into her, bloody blisters boiling up around the edges of the wound. She instantly felt an extreme burning sensation on her left shoulder as well. But by far the worst was the splash that hit her right in the face. Boom! Your face.
I hope.
She shrieked like a banshee. No, I can't do it. Like, fucking rip my throat.
Oh, Jesus.
As the stuff burned through her right cheek, exposing muscle and white bones and offering a view of the inside of her mouth. In a matter of minutes, her appearance changed from that of a cute filly into that of a monster. You did the mash. You did the monster mash. The monster mash. You caught on in a flash. With half her face missing. Oh, God. She's Two-Face from Batman. I'll stall as much as I want, Apple. Oh, my God. Alright, the rest of her body covered in bloody blisters, craters and sores, not quite unlike how some ponies might picture a zombie. In addition to that, the acid had kept melting away the flesh from her legs as well, having reached up to just under her knees now. Silver Spoon couldn't bear it any longer, and pulled her hoof off the button, determined to never press it down ever again, no matter what the cost. She swallowed back the fear as the blade started spinning again and approached her. She had liked the name of her character in the play, Silver Tongue. Oh, wow. But that was exactly how she viewed herself. She had always thought she had a knack for using words to suit her own purpose, and would perhaps have gone far in the diplomacy business, or something like that. One day, she thought, it's likely that Cheerliee knew about this as well, and didn't doubt that this was all some sort of sick joke to her. She couldn't understand her teacher's reasons or motivations, and in just a few idle seconds, she'd never be able to ask anymore.
She tried screaming out, but no answer ever came as the blades pressed against her lips. A maelstrom of cuts and slices rained down from the tip of her tongue as the blades tore into it. Hot blood filled her mouth, slipped down her throat, and dripped down her chin as she tried to scream, but she only managed to produce a disgusting, wet, gurgling noise from the back of her throat. Her body shook, and her one remaining eye rolled back into her head as the knives continued their bloody work. They advanced slowly, and to Spoon it seemed slower still as she experienced pain of such a magnitude that the loss of her eye paled in comparison. Bit by bit, her tongue got shredded, and the remaining stump of flailed around wildly, oh my god, as she tried to keep it out of reach. Fuck, but the blades were everywhere by now. Suddenly, the machine stopped and pulled back, having made minced meat out of the very last part of Silver's tongue. The searing needles that had been sticking around in her mouth turned into an intense but monotonous pain, which was only broken by the pounding sensation she felt where her tongue had once been. Fucking hell. In her dazed and sickened state, she felt the acute need to breathe as the blood that had flown down her throat threatened to drown her. With a hacking cough and surge of energy born from desperation, she managed to forge the blood up and out of her throat, making it spill out of her mouth and cascade down her body like a ball. With the stabbing sensation in her empty socket and the pounding in her mouth, Spoon couldn't think straight anymore. It was as if pain had become her only reality, and it blocked everything else out. She tried to speak, but could only produce a low, guttural sound, which would have made her envious of Diamond's constant moans and sobs, were she still able to consciously register. But it wasn't quite what she had been hoping for. Scootaloo had put up a better fight than this. She walked over to the machine and turned it off, moving to the side of the room to pick up a small bag of tools she had left there, just in case, no matter how well she had calibrated all of these machines. Cheerliee harbored no illusion when it finally came down to it. She could only count on herself to get what? She could only
first sentence.
This is weird. She could only count on herself to get job done right.
It was just a bad sentence. First 5-6 words of the next sentence are awful.
Really? She took out a hammer and a chisel and put them down next to the now only semi-conscious Silver Spoon. In the absence of any digits, such as the ones the Griffins had, ponies had to find a different way to hold the chisel in place as they swung the hammer. The solution came in the form of a metal shoe, which extended past the hoof and had a hole in the tip, which could hold the chisel in place. Typically, a chisel and a shoe were made in such a way that the thicker part, the end of the chisel the hammer hit, couldn't fit through the hole. Alright, Joel, Cam, can you sit from here for a bit?
Yeah, okay.
Fuck, I'm not enjoying this.
Yeah.
Cheerliee slipped.
Yeah. Oh. Cheerliee slipped on the heavy shoe and put the chisel through the hole with her teeth before grabbing hold of the hammer in the same way. She positioned the chisel carefully, aiming it right above the filly's right hoof, just under the metal band holding her right leg in place. With a great swing, she brought the hammer down, driving the tip of the chisel into the filly's leg, scraping up against the hoof from above. Silver Spoon, who had been apathetically floating in a sea of pain until now, suddenly let out a piercing, if garbled, shriek as her remaining eye flew wide open. More of her blood started spilling onto the floor, and Cheerliee grinned as best as she could while holding the hammer. Just above the hoof was one of the most sensitive spots in the pony body, which is why the hoof protected it so well in the first place.
I'll be back in a second.
You want me to keep reading?
Yeah.
Alright. She drew the hammer back and slammed it down again and again, driving the thin metal rod further in with every swing. The yelps and cries from the filly excited her further and further, and she began to have trouble keeping the hammer in her mouth because her body trembled so. With a last mighty swing, the tip of the chisel suddenly emerged from the other side of the filly's hoof. Oh, as the poor thing whimpered in pain, and her blood stained the floor in multiple places. With a sudden rush of inspiration, Cheerliee swung the hammer down again, this time aiming not for the thicker bulge at the end, but simply for the side of the chisel, as the metal rod struck horizontally in the filly's leg. The blow pushing the rod down against the hoof, which, already not attached to the leg anymore in the middle, simply broke off, leaving only a bloody stump with some scattered fragments of hoof still attached. The filly let out a gurgling cry of pain, as her eye rolled back in its sockets, and then suddenly fell silent. Cheerliee frowned as she dropped the hammer and brought her head level with Spoon's. The little wretch had fainted. "Oh, come on now. Not now. It's only starting to get fun," she screamed in frustration as she swung a hoof at the filly's head, hitting her right in the face. There wasn't even the tiniest response. The pink mare sighed. She quickly started undoing all the bindings that held Silver Spoon in place, the filly falling into the pool of her own blood as she slipped off the last ones. Cheer grabbed the filly by her hair and started dragging her to the side of the room, leaving a wide-red smudge trailing behind her victim. A portion of the floor had been slightly lowered here, leaving a small depressed circle on the ground, which had been outside of the filly's field of vision so far. Nonchalantly, she threw the filly into the circle, not particularly caring how she landed. She fell down in a crumpled heap in the center, and remained there motionlessly, except for the slight heaving of her chest with every breath. Cheerliee then made her way to the glass tank, staring straight into Diamond's eyes, not completely sure the filly still had the use of her right eye, the acid having taken a heavy toll on that side of her face. Will you let me go?" the filly managed to say hoarsely, obviously nearing the end of her strength. Cheerliee smiled her kindest smile. "But of course I'll let you go, and Silver Spoon as well. But only if you can reach her." She broke into a grin as she walked to the wall next to the glass cylinder and pulled down one of the levers there. Oh no. At once, several holes opened in the floor inside of the glass walls, draining away the clear vitriol. Once it was mostly gone, she pulled another lever and the glass circle got lifted up off the ground until there was enough space underneath it for a pony to walk upright. At the same time, the filly's bindings automatically released her, and she crashed down to the floor from a small height. Her legs, bare bones up to her knees, couldn't support her weight. Snapped in two. Sharp fragments of bone jumping away as the pitiful remnants of her lower legs fell away to the sides. Oh, right. As luck would have it, the sharp shard of her right leg instead buried itself in Diamond's side as she fell onto it. And for the umpteenth time that evening, Tiara howled in pain, even while trying to overcome the shock of breaking all her legs at once. As the little stump she had left hit the ground, the small layer of acid still there started biting into her stomach. But that pain paled in comparison to what Diamond Tiara had already been through so far, and she paid it almost no heed as she tried to bite back the agony she was already in. "So just get to your friend, and you're both out of here. Who knows, there might even be unicorn doctors good enough to fix you up," the teacher pony chuckled malignantly. Tiara tried to get up, but as soon as she attempted to rest any weight on the jagged shards of bone now sticking out of her considerably shortened legs, she fell right back down again, hitting more heavily than a mare in labor. Oh, even if she hadn't been in pain, it wouldn't have been easy to balance on the stems of the bones at all. You kind of need muscles to do that.
Yeah. Oh, God.
For a moment, she thought of giving up right then and there. She was instantly reminded of her bravery her friend had shown every time she refused to push down the button any longer. She owed it to herself to at least try. It was a few meters to the pit and the ground, so the light pink filly started to lift her little legs over her head, trying to drag her body forward. Every time she did this, she felt like she was about to faint from the pain. But she pressed on, persevered, to save herself and her friend. Cheerliee watched with giddy excitement, taunting the filly every step of the way. Hey, almost there. What's taking you so long? Come on, up the pace, she said, laughing. The filly ignored her as best as she could, and finally reached the circular pit in the ground. She tried to carefully lower herself into it, but slipped and fell on her side, driving the bone shard still deeper into her side. She winced and groaned as she dragged herself to the center of the circle, putting the stumps of her legs around Silver Spoon in a clumsy head. Oh, Spoon. She just managed.
So creepy. Oh, Spoon.
The gray filly managed to whisper as she slowly opened an eye. The other pony tried to smile at her friend, but the result was grotesque at best. We'll be okay. She'll let us go. I reached you. Yeah, about that, came Cheerlee's cold voice as she pulled down yet another lever. I lied. Both of the fillies looked up as they heard a rumbling noise coming from a pipe above them, and they saw a familiar clear liquid gush down. They realized they wouldn't get to see anything else ever again.
You know what? I think
How are they going to
just
get out of that bucket of maple syrup?
Oh my god. Yeah, we're just gonna cut it off here. And then, you know, 'cause it's a break in the, so we'll just cut it off, and then I guess pick this up again tomorrow. You down for that, Cam?
Yeah. What's tomorrow? I might not actually be here tomorrow.
So I guess it'll just be Lucas and I then, continuing the next part.
I suppose.
Lucas?
I'm gonna.
Yeah, sure.
All right. Oh God.
That didn't sound too. It's like, oh, okay, but not really.
Keep recording for a bit. We'll just get some of the afterthought in here. Thoughts on this one?
Drills to the face.
Yeah.
That's my thought.
You know,
Hey,
with that metal cylinder, I thought it would have been like acid would get poured into it or something. Not a drill. Jesus.
Jesus Christ. Well, no, what got me was the needle, and then it.
Oh, in the eye?
And then it spun.
Oh God.
I suppose it have to, because otherwise it would just. I don't
kind of
know.
sit there.
It would have just.
You think she would have died though from that?
She would have passed out easy.
But I guess not. Ponies can't pass out. Oh shit, eh? God. Like the one with Scootaloo, the bones cracking under the cage. Jesus. Just trying to hold it up. It was like it was she's putting up resistance, like it was just really like never stood a chance.
No.
At least in Saw they can have a chance to get out. And here it's like, well, fuck you, you're gonna die anyways. Oh God.
Not a pony, apparently.
You know what? This compared to Cupcakes is like it's nothing compared to this.
I don't even. The acid was bad. I mean,
I know.
Apparently that shit's really corrosive. But that needle freaked me right the fuck out.
I know. It's I hate this stuff. Yeah, exactly. Cupcakes is like a mild kind of story. Compared to this, it's I don't know. It's like nothing. I guess it's Oh, Cupcakes too. Jesus, are you reading what this guy's writing? He's like reading all of these things. God, I don't really want to know how this.
Cupcakes?
I don't know. There's like 20 of them.
The garden. Is she gonna like bury them and use her?
I have no idea, but this is like, don't say anything, you guys, because we want it to be a surprise. But, geez, I really just don't want to know where this is gonna go.
It goes bad. That's where it goes.
Well, obviously it's gonna be terrible. Are they gonna kill off like the entire class? I think so, but this is like, I don't really want to. All right. Well, we'll continue this up tomorrow. Thanks for listening, you
Yeah.
6 bucks. I hope you die. Goodbye.
Bye. Oh,
Bye.
easy.